Hey, I'm Michael Durenda,
And I'm Jake Bennett.
and welcome to episode 119 of the North Meet South web podcast.
Jigga jigga jinny, da 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 da, ba-dum, bum, 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 ba-dum, ba-dum, bum, ba-dum, bum, bum,
Extreme.
bum, ba-dum, ba-dum, bum, ba-da-dum, bum, bum, ba-dum, ba-dum, da-da-da-dum. Chow, chicka chicka chow.
Just freestyling
Hey,
there. The
hey,
number, the
speaking
number,
of
the number,
freestyling,
the number. No, before we do that, the number
what's that?
119 is forever gonna scar me. Um, the
Uh-oh.
last time, the last time my football team made the grand final, we lost by 119 points. So
That seems like you guys got trounced. Or
we
maybe that's
really
just,
did. It was a
yeah,
record
that's pretty
bad
bad.
loss. So
Yeah,
yeah, every time I
that's
see
pretty
that
bad.
number, it gives me the
Yikes.
heebie-jeebies.
The heebie-jeebies. Boy, okay, big week. It's been a big week. I'm gonna run through really quick.
Go,
Okay, are you
go,
ready?
go, go.
Couple things. American Idol. There is a girl named Leah Marlene. She is from Normal, Illinois, where we are at,
Okay.
and she was playing at a coffee shop a year ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I told Laura, I was like, this girl's really good. I was like, she could be on like American Idol or The Voice. And a year later, she's in the top 3. And so we got to go see her hometown parade this week, which was super cool. So we got to see, like, we were like, this close to her, like, hey, Leah, how's it going? It was super cool. And then we got to go to her concert, which was really fun. It was packed. It was like a crush of people. It was literally shoulder to shoulder, which has been a long time since I've done that, right? COVID and all that stuff. Okay. Moving on from that. I sold a old bike today, and a dude came by to pick it up with his Rivian truck.
Nice.
And my oldest is walking, and he's going to hear the story as I'm telling you. He's going to be so jealous. I was like, hey kids, come look at this truck. And Graham, say hi to Michael and to the world. Say hi.
Hey.
Hi.
How you doing, bud?
There he is.
You can't hear.
There is everybody. And so so the guy was like, you want to take a ride? I was like, yes. And so my kids were outside, and we jumped in there, and he put it in sport mode, and so it like the air suspension like lowers down, and then he just like without even like
saying
he's
anything.
like, ready? And we're like, sure. He floored it, and it was, oh my gosh, it was crazy. My kids were screaming. It was so funny. 0 to 60 in like 3.5 seconds. It was wild.
And then he
turned on
the electric motor.
Oh my gosh, it was incredible. And so he turned around at the end of the street and did it again. And the kids were just like loving it. They were so excited. So Graham's going to be so bummed that he didn't get. Are you bummed, Graham? Oh, he's bummed. But he just got back from like a 5-hour birthday party, so he's not too bummed.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, there's that. I am also channeling my inner West boss, and I am doing a Power Wheels conversion to use 18-volt batteries, like lithium ions. And so I just bought those today, so I'm on that right now. And then got some other stuff we can talk about for the podcast. But that's all my like weekly like life stuff going on. And I put a new pool pump in today because my old one was messing up. So I did that today as well. Whew, it's been a busy week. And we did a garage sale this weekend too.
This pool thing sounds like a lot of work.
It is. It's always broken. Something's always broken. But
we my wife always say, when we win the lottery, we're going to go and build our dream home. And there was one that came up in one of Melbourne's suburbs. So it's in Victoria, interstate from us. But it was like this $12 million home. And it was, it was huge. For anyone interested, $12 million works out to about $27,000 a month in mortgage repayments.
Yep.
And it's got like this home theater, but the home theater was sunk into the back of the house, and so the back window of the home theater was the pool. So you were like in under the pool, and I'm like,
what?
I'm not sure how I feel about that, but $12 million. And I mean, in this climate, it's going to go for more than that, obviously. But that was a nice little pool tangent.
Yeah, and so I'm not done with the pool yet. We can't get in it until so you have to ground the pool, but then you also have to bond the different elements together. Like even the cement surrounding the pool has this like copper cable going through it to like prevent shock or something. I don't know. Right. It's crazy. I don't understand it all, but I'm working on it, so I'll have it done tomorrow.
Nice.
Well, so that's my week
before you really get into the thick of summer.
Yeah, we've already used it a couple times. Like the old pump was working, it just wasn't working very well. It was super loud, and so I got a new one off Facebook Marketplace of all places.
Nice. Yeah,
Facebook Marketplace is the stuff, man. It's awesome. Love it.
Yeah, it's pretty good if you want to get rid of stuff.
Yep.
I mean,
Yep.
I don't really buy a lot of stuff on there, but Re often gets rid of like kid stuff that we don't need anymore. We just got
Yeah.
rid of
It's
like
it's
baby
awesome.
monitors and like sound machines, and we've got like a rocking chair we're not using anymore, like all this kind of stuff. It like
Yeah.
disappears within a couple of days max.
Totally.
So
It used to be like Craigslist was the only thing that you could use, but that was only like shady people using that. And
right,
Facebook is
yeah,
like everybody, so much larger audience, and
yeah,
yeah, it works out pretty well.
yeah, nice.
So personal stuff, that was me.
Hmm.
We're trying to keep this one tight, and I've got a couple things to talk about here. So let's hear about your week. How'd your week go?
Yeah, pretty good.
Anything crazy going
Pretty
on?
quiet. The in-laws offered to take the kids for a few hours yesterday, so Rhea and I went to Gold Class to go and see Doctor Strange in the Universe of
Oh,
Madness,
nice. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
which was nice. Good movie, like I was saying to a friend of mine yesterday, like they didn't really like it, and I said that the problem with these movies now is because Marvel is now like into Phase 4. They've been doing this for I don't know, what 15 years or something. 20 years. Like, has it been that long? I don't remember when Iron Man came out, but they've been doing this so long that they can afford to have like not really a flop as such, but they could have these movies that kind of don't really tell their own story. They're
Okay,
kind of
sure.
like they're more tying pieces together.
Yeah, that makes sense.
They're
Yeah.
what do you call it? Like stop offs. When you're going from A to B, but you've got not a layover. What's the word? Damn,
I know
a
it's
waypoint. So they've got like a waypoint between stories, and so
mhm.
and the thing now because Disney's got
Segue. It's like a
it's a
segue
segue.
between
Well,
this. Yeah, thank you.
yeah, sort of,
Sort of?
maybe. Um, but and Disney's got so much content production now that they've got.
Yeah, yeah.
There were elements in this movie that if you hadn't seen elements of like the TV series, that you'd miss things, and it doesn't detract from the story, but I think it gives you a much more complete picture of what's happening if you have those extra bits and pieces.
Yeah, it's like for the
Um,
super fans, there's something extra there, right? Which is
mhm,
pretty cool that they do
yeah,
that.
and it sort of ties those things together. But the movie, like Spider-Man, was really really good, and this
Yep,
was
yep.
good, but it gave itself away a little bit earlier than I was expecting. But
Interesting.
like
Like it didn't
I
wait till
still,
the end.
yeah, I still thought it was a good film. It was nice to see that Sam Raimi, who is the director, Sam Raimi, Evil Dead, like he's a career horror sort
Okay,
of
sure.
person. They kind of let Sam Raimi make a Sam Raimi movie, and this was a bit more. It was a bit darker. It was a bit more violent than what we've seen.
Mm,
And this is like
that's kind of cool though.
we've seen this kind of work with Deadpool and with Wolverine, and so they can sort of start branching out and doing this stuff because they know that they've got the captive audience.
Yep, yep, yep.
But I
That's a good
think
point too.
you kind of have to consume everything, and it's a big commitment for lots of people. Like not everyone's going to do it. Not everyone's going to watch all of the TV series, and not everyone's going to read
Yeah,
all the stuff
yeah.
around it. So, um, it's probably
That's
going to
that's like
lose some
probably not
fans along
me.
the way, but
Yeah, I'm
it's still
probably
going
not
to
gonna
be
do it
like a
all that,
massive.
but
Like you can still go and see it, and it's still an enjoyable
yeah,
film.
yeah,
I
yeah.
thought, but
Mhm.
it depends on how much you get into the story. And people were saying that the pacing was off and it was a bit quick and place. And I thought it was good. But it was the first time we've been to a movie in 6 months.
Yep.
Not going out. So yeah, we did the gold
Yeah.
class thing. Ate way too much food.
That's
They said, "Oh, we're going to bring out an entree of buffalo wings." I'm like, probably 4 or 5, maybe 6, half a dozen. I brought out like
yeah.
9 or 10 or something like that, and I was
Nice.
like,
Nice.
I didn't eat dinner last night. I ate so much, it was
That's hilarious,
not good.
dude.
So,
That's good though. That's
but it
so
was
good. Yeah, I get to
nice
go to
to do
those
that,
theaters
and
that
like the
treat you really
kids,
well. Yeah.
yeah, and the kids, they had a great time. So it's good to know. Like they're a bit, Eli will be
Win-win.
4 in 3 weeks, and lives like a bit older now, so she isn't so desperately attached to mum. So it's nice to know that we can kind of leave the kids for a few hours and go and just enjoy some stuff by ourselves, which has been sorely lacking for the last couple of years. So yeah,
Absolutely.
but
That's awesome,
yeah,
man. I'm super
that's
glad to
about
hear
the
that.
highlight. That's about the highlight
Pretty
for us.
cool.
So it's good.
Pretty cool. Okay, I will transition to our work stuff. And also, before we do that, I'm going to talk about Work Vivo a little bit. So,
Mm.
Work Vivo has been a long-time sponsor of the show, and we're really thankful for them. They help to keep the lights on. They are basically your social network, employee experience that brings your entire company together. So, they do all sorts of cool stuff, and I would love to sum it all up in like me speaking, but they actually have this really super cool commercial that they just created. It's actually very entertaining and not like the cheesy entertaining. It's
Mhm.
like I wanted to watch it again, sort of entertaining. Like it's really, really well done. So you should definitely go check it out. If you're looking for a way to sort of let your people at your company stay connected, even in this like new remote first sort of work environment, check out WorkVivo. It's like they were around before COVID, but I feel like since COVID, they've really kind of exploded a bit. Like I know they just redid their site again. It's just good stuff. Yeah, so definitely check that out. Thanks WorkVivo for sponsoring the show. Okay, moving on past that, I am super stoked right now. I feel like my dev team is really rounding out. So we've got Jimmy, who is my guy who's been around for a while, and then we just hired this new dude, Luke Bouch. And so he's like 19 years old, but
Yeah, right.
he's killing it. It's really exciting. And so he's hired on as a junior dev.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I wanted to bring him up is because he is running this, he's doing this SaaS called sublimeblogs.com, which is basically a way for you to add, it's basically a little mini CMS, and you can write and post to that. And then what it'll do is it will send a webhook for you to like your static site builder, and then provide a JSON feed to your static site builder so that your site can get rebuilt with your blog pages. So instead of having to use something like Jigsaw or whatever, you could use this without having to set up like a headless WordPress sort of deal. You could use this, and then it would just basically trigger your rebuild to be like, hey, go ahead and go do that. So I am interested to talk to him a little bit about like, so what were the pain points that made him do this? And as I was thinking about that, he was like, hey, does getting hired with you mean we get a free pass to be on the podcast? Because actually, the way I found him was he commented on one of my gists when we were talking about the Wordle solver.
Mm-hmm.
You remember that? We talked about that? And he was like, hey, I want to port this to JavaScript. Do you mind if I do that? I was like, yeah, sure, that's fine. I was like, who is this guy? And started looking at his stuff. I was like, this guy would be a great junior developer. So with that being said, I also realized that we haven't had my other amazing developer, Jimmy, on. So I would love to actually have both of them on at some time. So maybe in the next couple of weeks, we can have either one or both of those dudes on. That would be super fun.
Yeah.
But the main thing I wanted to bring that up for is he is building all of that stuff in the Tall Stack. And so we've looked at a couple of the sites that we have built internally. And so he's working on some of those now. And he's like, dude, I would love to rebuild this in Tall Stack. And I'm like, maybe. I was like, maybe. Like, what's, so I asked him, like, bring me the, what's the argument? Like, how does this work? And I think the thing that was most jarring for me is I don't know what the conventions are around the Tall Stack, right? I feel like with Laravel, it's very resource oriented, right? So you have models, which are like your resources, and you have controllers, which are based around resources, and you have policies, which are based around resources, and you have all of it just seems like everything's based around resources, right? Your URLs, your routes, all of that stuff. Like that's kind of where we've lived the last like decade. I feel like I have anyway.
Yeah.
And so with this, I was like looking at some of his stuff, and he's got components, and it's basically like, what he's saying is all of the things that are related, like all the concerns that are related to a particular process are like embedded in a single component, which is interesting, but it's weird for me. It just it just feels weird, right? So rather than being based around controllers, because the Tall Stack, you don't really, I mean, you can have controllers, and that's fine. You can do that if you want to do it that way. But you can have like single page or like full page components, right? Where you're just loading a Livewire component, right?
Yeah.
And then you kind of just control everything through there. Like you get all your stuff straight out of the database from there. You can pass in props if you want to a Livewire component, but you can also just kind of load everything in, like treat your component like a controller, right? So I'm interested to talk to Luke, but also people maybe who have been doing this longer too, and just kind of see like, what is the convention? Like, I don't know what the conventions are, how they, how do they, hold on just one second. Hey dude, head up. How they go about setting stuff up, and so anyway, I would love to talk about that at some point in the future. The interesting thing is like Matt Stauffer has created like a website for the Tall Stack.
Okay.
And so I'm trying to remember what it was. I just went to it. If you just look up Tall Stack, he's got a website out there. It is, maybe it's just like tallstack.dev. Yeah, exactly. So It's basically just explaining what the tall stack is: Tailwind, Alpine, Livewire, and Laravel, right? So
Mm-hmm.
this is a full stack development solution built by Laravel community team members. And then you've got like, okay, show me an example app. And the example app that they reference is Nova packages. So if you've ever used Nova, you know that packages are a large part of the ecosystem that sort of give you superpowers, right?
Yeah.
You can use all these other tools that people have built and kind of bring them into your Nova installation. I did not realize Nova packages was written using the tall stack. So I literally looked at 2 seconds before we started, and I'm sure I could dig in there and sort of find some of the conventions. Since Matt Stauffer was the one to sort of coin this term, the tall stack, he's probably a authoritative resource for what the convention is, how you do this. But I'm just interested. I'm interested to see like how people typically do this. I like Livewire. It's great, but I'm not all in on it yet.
Yeah.
I'm not there. I still sort of like sprinkle it in a bit, and I don't know. I'm not sure. I just need to get more experience with it and get more comfortable with it, I think.
Yeah, so I need to build a small, like little cruddy admin thing this week.
Agreed.
So
yeah.
I've
you have to do that for your job. You're saying.
So I did that. I did
Okay,
that this
gotcha.
week. So I've been working on this integration with a third party, with a vendor API, or it's an industry API. So there's like a 70,000 line JSON schema document. And I was like going through the API response, the package that they send us, and then creating all of you've lost my camera. It's gone. Never mind. So I've been going through this. I know why this is. I have to recable my camera so that it's not trying to draw power from my MacBook, because the MacBook thinks it's using too much and then turns it off. So we can use this camera instead, which you probably can't see, but that's okay.
I can't, but that's okay.
So I had to build this credit. So we've got this like 70,000 lines of JSON, and I had to, I was going through this one by one and creating DTOs and doing all of that, and then I got to a point where I'm like, there is like literally hundreds of different resources. And so what I stopped what I was doing manually, and I created like a tiny little Laravel app that basically went through and recursively generated all the DTOs for me. It figured out all of
I remember that.
All of the types. It figured out, does this need to be an array of types? Is it, is it a float? Is it whatever? Did all the typing for it, generated all of the, like we were using enums, so it generated all of the enums as well. And then we had to do mapping of the enums that are in the spec to the enums that are in our platform. And to do that, I kind of needed just easy, like I could go in the database and do it, but it's easier to see like this is the value that I've got and this is what I'm mapping it to. And then that not only maps to like an enum in our system, but it also could map to another resource type. So we've got liabilities, we've got expenses, we've got assets, and we've got there's one other that I can't. Anyway, so there's 4 different things that it could map to. And so for each one of these
liabilities, assets.
Yeah, income. That's right. Yeah, incomes, assets, expenses, and liabilities. And so to do this all in the database, it's like you got to go and like you see the value, but you don't know what that's a child of and things like that. And so I just built this little CRUD app. I built it with the tall stack because I just pulled in some table styles from Tailwind UI. I grabbed, sprinkled in a bit of Alpine that I pulled from Jetstream just to say like when you save it, you save it. The interesting thing to me is I have one component and it's just like there's a show enum and then an update enum. And so the show enum just wraps the update enum and it's just like goes through a loop and puts in there like this is update enum. When you update it, it will take the whatever is bound to that instance and it'll then just save the model. So you can bind properties directly to a model using Livewire. And then you set up validation rules, and that way it knows that, okay, this is something that I'm allowed to save. And then you can just do like model save when you send that action, and then you send back an event that says saved or, that it's done. And then you can respond to that in the component to display a flash message, whatever. So the thing with that is like I wanted to be able to say like, okay, if I take the link to this specific enum, like the show route or the edit route, I want to be able to send that and be able to like get back to it without having to like, because if you could do it all as an inline thing where, you know, clicking on the edit button is just a button and then it loads that thing, that entity into the component, and then you can manipulate it and save it, but then you can't get back to it. Like I can't go directly to that resource. I can't go backwards and forwards in the browser. I've got to go and like find the link, click it, or find the button, click it, and then it'll load that thing. So, but that's doing full page refreshes. It's not like Inertia where it's doing like a component swap. But that, I mean, that's the only thing really. But other than that, like it's totally interactive experience. So it's quite nice to do that. And I was able to throw that together in like 30 minutes, give me this full
Yeah.
UI to do everything I
That-
needed, so I could go and update it.
Yeah.
And then it wrote out all of my enums, all of my resources back. It like did all of the constructors because it knows, okay, well, this is an enum, which means in the sparsity data transfer object package, you need to override the constructor and say, okay, when you get this type, because it knows how to deal with enums and primitives like strings and floats and ints and things like that. But if you want it to initialize an enum, well, you need to then override the constructor and say, okay, when I get this property, you need to initialize the enum object from the value in the parameter array. So I've got it generating all of that. It generates the maps for the values because sometimes they got hyphens in there, so the method names don't map correctly and things like that. So it does all of this. Literally 600 files generated for me on the back of like 2 hours of writing this little app, which then let me focus on the rest of the stuff. And let me tell you, I have enjoyed, like it's absolute grunt work doing all this stuff and so I'm doing all the mappings now between, like, now that I've got the enums mapped, I then have to map like the resource objects onto our data structures and for our database. So doing all that kind of stuff and just like testing, like being able to test all of that and say like, this is going to work and it's going to do what we expect it to do, using like collections, all of this stuff that everyone that listens to this podcast probably is doing in their day job that I missed out like all of last year when I was not touching Laravel at all, just to come back and write Laravel. And even though it's like Laravel 6, just the amount of stuff that's in there and the power that you get from it right out of the box that you don't have to think about. Being able to take, like, we have an array of living expenses, and the living expenses we need to then convert to our like types. We then group by those types, because you can have like multiple living expenses for like groceries is a lifestyle expense or whatever. So you can have multiple. So it just grabs all of those, group them, transform them, and calculate a total of that, and then just return this flat array, which is just like key value of like the category and then the float amount in like 3 lines. And it's just,
yeah, it's beautiful, right? It's like we're so used to working in Laravel. Like I feel like I'm so fluent in it. Inertia is great. Like some of the things that it offers you are wonderful, but like I also still really enjoy Blade, you know? So it's like the fact that you can do all that stuff and just sort of stay in that lane, but get all the other benefits from Livewire is great. So like I'm there. Like I get the benefit of it. Like there are just some questions I have around
like,
you know,
the best practice. And
yeah,
like,
exactly. The best practice. And then the other thing too, which I don't know if you ran into this, like, did you find that like if you run into a problem with Livewire, I've had some really funky debugging stuff in Livewire. Like I'll get this really obscure error, like, and it's coming through the JavaScript side of things. And I have no idea where to start when it comes to like looking at that. I'm not exactly sure, you know, where the error is coming from necessarily. So I just kind of have to start DDing and see where I'm getting in the code. And it's like, whereas if I'm dealing with like just Laravel and Blade, like I know kind of where I'm at. And I mean, I guess you get the same sort of things with like Inertia, but like Vue is really, really, really cognizant of returning very clear error messages. You know, it's not always the case. It can't always be that way. But that was one of the things I really appreciated about Vue from the very start was they work really hard to make sure you get good error messages. So not that that's not the case with the Caleb and Livewire. It's just I've had some weird experiences with that. And there's just some things I don't understand about it that I think I need to fill in some gaps in my knowledge in order to be able to feel like I'm really comfortable with it. I used it for a toy sort of app and loved it. Freaking loved it. It was so much faster to do it that way. Like you said, literally same sort of deal. It was like I had something that I needed to get done in like a week. That was all the time I had for it. But it was
Yeah.
sort of complex and it needed to be like real time, like live updating
Hmm.
stuff. And so I was like, I'm just gonna try Livewire and threw
Yeah.
it together and works like a charm.
Yeah.
Like awesome.
I
Love it.
think if
Great
you're not,
experience. I just didn't know there was a couple things where I was like, oh, is that the right way to do that? I don't know. I
mm,
just felt uncomfortable about it. And it's like, eh. So it's probably
yeah, I
just more
think,
time. I
yeah,
need it.
I think
I
this
need
is
that.
the key difference for me between Inertia and Livewire is that if you're not familiar with JavaScript, if you're not familiar with Vue or React for that matter, or even I think they've got you can do it with Svelte now. If you're a Laravel developer, you're a PHP developer, and you're not familiar with the front end stuff, and you don't want to have to worry about like the whole asset pipeline and the build step and all of that kind of stuff, then
Which I love that
Tailwind,
about Livewire. You don't have to do that.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, then Livewire, sorry, is definitely like it's just an extension. You're just writing Blade, you're just writing PHP. You don't have to worry about the JavaScript unless you want to sprinkle some Alpine in for
Right.
interactivity.
Yeah. But even that,
And
it's not a build step. It's just Alpine.
no, it's
So
just Alpine. So like it just works, and it's a natural progression. And you may find that you need some more interactivity or some more stuff that that you can't get with that tool stack, and that you would go towards Vue. But I think for a lot of applications that we as Laravel developers would be building, that the simplicity offered and then the responsiveness you get by using the tool stack is just like it makes it a really easy decision, especially if if you need to do something quickly. You don't have to go and refresh yourself, even if you've used Vue but you don't use it that often. There's no refresher. You just go and write.
yeah.
And as you say, you may not do it in the right way or in the best practice way or whatever,
Yeah.
but if you've only got a week to do it, it probably doesn't matter that much. You can come back and
Right.
refine it
Right.
later. That said, Caleb's got so many videos on the
That's true.
Livewire
Yeah.
website, the screencast. Check them out because that's as good an indication of how you should be doing it, or the best way of doing it from the creator of the framework. And then I think there's one other person that does some of the screencasts as well there now as well.
Well, Jason, what's his name? They're working on those Livewire components together.
Mm-hmm.
What's his name? Jason.
Yeah.
Jason what? What's his name? How am I missing this?
There's two, and I don't want to say the wrong one.
Jason Beggs.
It is Jason Beggs?
I think it is. Yeah, I think Jason Beggs and Caleb are working together on some stuff. Yeah, those
cool.
the Alpine components, I think.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
Cool. Yeah.
The what was the other thing I was going to say about that? Oh, the other thing I was going to say, which was interesting, is so like Jimmy, my one dev, knows Vue pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was bringing on Luke, I was like, so how well do you know Vue? He's like, I mean, like I've used it a little bit, but like not very, very much. And so I'm like, okay. But it was interesting as we were looking like we were looking through some of it, how much Alpine and Vue actually match up, especially if you're just using Vue sort of like for little components throughout. Like, because Alpine is very much influenced by Vue, right? It's in the browser, right? So you have this data object. It's just, instead of being embedded in a component, it's embedded in the HTML itself. You have this little object that's just your X data, your X dash data, right? The model binding, all of that stuff is still the same. So you have a lot of stuff that's similar. So even it's funny, even talking to somebody like Luke who hasn't had a lot of experience with Vue but has a good deal of experience with Alpine, it's like, oh wait, they kind of work the same. Oh, all right, well that feels pretty familiar then. And so it is just interesting how much crossover there is between those things.
Yeah, I think it was very very clever on Caleb's part to follow that kind of Vue model. In terms of when it was built, to use like the data attributes and use very similarly named attributes and things like that, because
totally agree.
It made it easier for people like you and I who were using Vue because it was like
absolutely
the in vogue option. To kind of just step back and just because you already had that, so the learning curve didn't exist, and it meant you could get that interactivity with like an implicit knowledge of how it worked, but you were just staying in the warm embrace of PHP and blade and controllers and things like that. You don't have to worry
Totally.
about any of it. So
And I
yeah, it's
think that is
definitely quite
part of
nice.
like, and we're at 29 minutes and 55 seconds, so I'm going to wrap this up here. But I think the interesting thing about this and some of the pain that Luke was feeling when he was writing this was like there was this we were sort of doing these nested. So like, think about like if you had a listing of items. Okay, so we had like these trainings basically, and I was like, oh, these trainings started out was like we had like 8 trainings, and so we didn't need any sort of hierarchy at all. But then it grew to like 100, right? And so
Hmm.
there was literally nothing to do to categorize them. The only thing you had was a description and a title. That's it. Like that is
Yep.
not tenable. You can't do that.
Yeah.
And so we needed to be able to add like tags or like categories, whatever. But we basically, I said, I want to be able to add like infinitely nestable categories. So think of it like almost like a file structure, right? You have folders. And then inside some of these folders, you're going to have either subfolders or you're going to have items that belong in those folders, right? So you can have kind of both.
Hmm.
And as we were going through those, so he was building this out with just a single table, and you'd click on it, and the page would refresh and go to like a separate page. And then you'd click, and it would like go to another new page. And I think for him, that's like, ugh, like gross. Like I just want to like that shouldn't have to be like a whole page deal.
Hmm.
Like I should just be able to like click the button and it's just there, right?
Yeah.
Like that's what
Yeah.
you're used to when you start using Livewire all the time. So I
Hmm.
think that's sort of some of the friction. It's like, well, we could do this better. Like it should just be immediate. Like you shouldn't have to do a whole new page reload. It's just changing this
Yeah.
one little piece. And so I'll be interested to see kind of how this shakes out in the near future here. But yeah, we'll line something up, have some guests on the next couple weeks, and I'm excited
Hmm.
about that. So we
Oh,
are at
cool.
30 minutes, so I'm gonna stick to our commitment here. Michael, any final words before we close this one out?
No, that's all I got. Just
Awesome.
excited. Just know that I really enjoy writing Laravel, and
Yes, I'm so glad so glad you're back in
like
Laravel land.
and I've been digging into stuff. Friday
You
night
have.
I watched Halo, the final episode of Halo on Friday night, and then I'm like, I could play some video games now, or I could go and work on and it was like work stuff, and I'm like, I'm just gonna spend an hour on it. I set my brain FM for an hour, and I put the headphones on and just like hit away at the keyboard for an hour, and then I went to bed happy.
Feels good, man. Feels good, doesn't it?
Yeah, yeah, it's good.
It's like a breath of fresh air. Hey, I'll say one other thing real quick. So, the work that you did on WilburPay when
Hmm.
you did that setup.shell script,
Yeah.
we copied and pasted a lot of that into another app, and we're using that over there as well. There's one app that we have that like literally requires like 8 databases, and it was really nice just to kind of have that as a starting point to be like, oh, this is a really good way to do this.
Nice.
And so, yeah, we've used your work. I don't know if we owe you a royalty or anything, but
As long as you don't release it anywhere, it'll be fine.
yeah, no, we're fine. We're fine. All right, everybody. This was episode 119. Thanks so much for tuning in. Find show notes for this episode at northmeetsouth.audio/119. If you have any questions or comments, hit us up on Twitter at Jacob Bennett, at Michael Dorinda, or at North South Audio. And rate us with your podcatcher of choice if you like the show. And in a couple weeks, we will have some guests on, and it'll be a real good time. Should be lots of fun. Thanks, WorkVivo, for sponsoring the show. We'll see you folks in 2 weeks.
Well,